Okay, so good morning. My name is Sherry Brummins, and I'm the Executive Director and the CEO of the Alliance of Community Service Providers. For those of you who are here at the National Constitution Center, thank you. We're glad you're here. And for those of you who are streaming live, we appreciate your participation today as well. Today, we welcome to the stage former City Council members Helen Gim, David O, along with former City Controller Rebecca Reinhart and retired Municipal Court Judge Jimmy DeLeon. I will note that due to other commitments, former council member Alan Dom and Sherelle Parker were unable to make it, as well as Jeff Brown and Eamon Brown. We have been working with their campaigns throughout this process, though, and at the end, we will go ahead and submit the questions to those campaigns as well, and then we'll let you all know. So I'd like to acknowledge some people in the room today and thank them for coming. We have the Commissioner of DBH-IDS, Dr. Jill Bowen. And then we have the following people who are running for City Council: Aaron Santamore, Donovan West, Durward Shelby, and Charles Reyes. We have former state representative and City Council member Denny O'Brien. And if I've missed anybody, my apologies. We were trying to get everybody's names as you were coming into the room, but for anybody else who is here, we welcome you and thank you for joining us today. And then finally, and this is not in order of importance, but I just want to say we have a number of Alliance board members here today for whom I am very grateful for. They were a very supportive board. And so we're glad that they're here. So thank you for that. We are hoping that today's conversation will shine a light on where the mayoral candidates stand on issues that impact our city. There are 3 organizations that are involved in sponsoring this. So while you see me up here as the Alliance person, we also have Scattergood Foundation and Children First PA. So if 1 or 2 of you could stand up so that the group can see who you are, that would be helpful. Thank you. This has been a really engaged planning committee, and without them as well, we would not be here today. So thank you for that. So more specifically, we hope to learn about where our mayoral candidates stand on the behavioral health, intellectual disabilities, autism, and substance use disorder services, as well as housing and workforce. These are all issues that are important to the people in this room and the people who are streaming online. As the 6th largest city in the US, Philadelphia has been profoundly impacted by COVID-19. Should be no surprise. These past few years have been detrimental to all Philadelphians, especially our children and youth. Add to that an already existing workforce shortage, opioid epidemic, extreme racial inequities, housing shortages, and high crime rates. And it's clear that our city, like many, is struggling. But Philadelphians are strong. It shouldn't come as no surprise that the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection is also well known for its grit and tenacity. And if you do not believe me, just watch us when the Eagles make the Super Bowl. Go Birds. What we need right now is brave leadership that prioritizes safety, equity, inclusion, improved health, and mental well-being for our city. We need a leader with focus and commitment to address the social determinants for all people. Basic needs like housing, food, quality education, quality healthcare, employment, transportation. All of these are important and necessary components for strong and healthy communities. This is going to require a real and deliberate focus on building a skilled workforce and pay living wages that allow people to stay working in human services and not leave for better paying jobs. It will require a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion that takes concrete actions to ensure that every person is heard and considered when decisions are being made. It will require intentional collaboration among our city departments and with the many human services providers who are in this room, who possess years and years of experience working in the trenches to improve the lives of the Philadelphians that we serve. And finally, it'll take bold willingness to look at the current systems and assess what is working and what is not, changing what needs to be changed, and improving what is working. So in a moment, I'm going to introduce our moderator, But before that, I just want to give you a sense of how things are going to go to the candidates. Our moderator is going to direct questions to each of you. You'll have 90 seconds or less to answer each one. Brittany here in the front will be holding up a timer, so you'll know where you stand. And then Jordan is going to hold up a piece of paper that will tell you you have 30 seconds left. As we get closer to the end, we're going to be taking questions from our live stream. And also you can text questions to this phone number here. And then we will get them. If we do not have time at the end to get to all of them, we're definitely going to pose them to the candidates and their campaigns, and we will get answers for you. Probably won't get to all of them, but we do promise you that we'll do our best. So I'm excited to introduce our moderator. He was born and raised in Tel Aviv, Israel, and he's been in the United States for about a decade now and has spent the last 10 years covering health-related issues for the Philadelphia Inquirer. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with him to plan this forum. He's not the guy that just showed up today and asked a bunch of questions. He's been involved in the planning process almost from the beginning. And I think you all are going to like him as much as we do. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator, Mr. Abe Gutman.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much, Jerry, and for that introduction. And thank you to the Alliance of Community Service Providers, Gathering Foundation, and Children First for hosting us today. Also, welcome to the candidates who took the time to participate in another forum. I believe not your only one today. And most importantly, really thank you to all of you for joining us in person and online. As an extremely anxious person, this is not like my element, but I thought that standing in front of a lot of human service providers is probably the safest I can get in being very anxious. So let's do this. Some good news. This is a little bit more intimate forum, so we'll have a little bit more time to dig in. Hopefully we can get into some questions I tried to look to find that you didn't answer before. Some of them you did answer before, and I apologize. So let's just do this. Okay, so like I mentioned, the past several years have been really rough on communities, rough on systems, and rough on service providers, right? And people are tired, they're burnt out, they're understaffed, organization understaffed, and they often work for rates that haven't changed for a really long time. And many of these people are here. So just to give a sense, in the recent budget testimony of the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability, about 1 in 4 positions in the department is currently vacant. Like many departments in the city, that's about the rate, I believe, across the board. So how could a mayoral candidate or a mayor help fill these human services vacancies and help human service providers not only maintain their level of staffing, but hopefully, even expand it? And Ms. Reinhardt, I'd like to start with you.
Well, good morning. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Rebecca Reinhardt, and I'm running for mayor after 15 years working for the city. I want to use my knowledge and experience to make our city truly work for the residents of our city. So in terms of using the power of the mayor's office to fill positions, I mean, the vacancies throughout our city workforce are a significant issue. And as mayor, I would strengthen the HR function, the recruitment, and also the communication about the benefit package that city employees are offered. That is on the city employee side. On the provider side, one thing that I would do is to work with the Department of Behavioral Health and therefore CBH to identify what the pain points are for the providers in terms of rates, also in terms of what could make it easier to recruit. I did an audit of behavioral health as the city controller and found significant issues with oversight of CBH on providers, also oversight of DBH over CBH. And I think that we need to look at the fee for service and what we pay our providers. to see what we could change around that. It is all reimbursed through the state and federal government. So to me, that is something that I would do and spearhead as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will get to some of that as we go. Ms. Gim?
Hi, good morning, everybody, and good morning, Abe. So I want to talk a little bit about something a little broader. I'm Helen Gim. I'm proud to come before you. While other candidates may be running for an office, I'm actually trying to change the way people live in the city and to build stronger youth and families. I've led turnarounds of broken systems of care all my life. And one of the things that I know is that we can't force people into these broken systems. And I think that's what turns a lot of people away. It's demoralizing to go into places where we warehouse children and neglect families instead of providing supports on the front end. It's demoralizing when we don't treat gun violence and trauma with the urgency we deserve. And it's demoralizing when we go in and try to package the same positions into situations where young people are dealing with crises far beyond what they can possibly imagine. The system does need to change, and that's what I'm going to lead you. This room, more than anybody else knows, you cannot just have a manager tinkering around the edges with solutions that are just too small for this moment. You need a mayor who's going to be visionary around it. So the way we do that is we start delving into creative new systems. I've led transformative ways to bring social workers into schools, how we're going to take down like broken systems like juvenile justice places and shut them down and create alternatives. Second, I want to work with our providers. Everything is on the table: tuition reimbursement, free, debt-free college, and training and partnerships that excite other opportunities as well.
Thank you for that. Mr. O?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think people who enter this field, I believe that they do it because they want to be impactful. They want to see value in what they do. They want their job to be worthwhile. So the first thing the mayor should do is to, within the city and within its partners, ensure that there's a clear understanding of what the mission is, what the rules are, and how we achieve that, to have the supports that are necessary in order for people to clearly understand what they're doing and to feel that they're supported in the workplace and out in the field. The second thing is they have to be compensated fairly. Nobody wants to be disrespected or undervalued, and it makes it challenging to do the work if you can't really plan for the future. And that's where things become, I think, also challenging because there's things the mayor can do kind of within the city government. And then when we're talking about to providers, there's things that the mayor could do, such as with tax incentives and other types of benefits, things like that, which I would be happy to do. But I think advocacy at the state level is critical, and some negotiation between what the city provides to the state in exchange for increase in rates. And then finally, quality of life is critical, and people will look at moving out of our city if we don't improve safety, transportation, cleanliness, and a good quality of life.
Thank you for that. And we will get to the issue of rates and how you think you'll approach the state. And now I realize I should have done that the next question, but if I'll change my order, everything will just, fall apart. So Mr. De Leon, same question. How do we fill those vacancies?
Thank you for that question, and good morning, everyone. So I realize that those we need the most are paid the least. Now, with me becoming mayor of this city, I'm ushering in a new beginning. So as a new beginning, I, as a military officer, learned that you have to lead from the front. So in order to bring in more people, I would be doing PSA announcements specifically with me as the PSA individual, requesting help from the city and help from across the country to bring in people that I need in order to fill these gaps. Now, as far as the money situation is concerned, we have over $800 million from the American Rescue Plan that has to be spent by 2025. In 2024, I would use 400 million of those dollars. In those dollars right there, I would find money that would fill the gaps as far as pay is concerned for our healthcare workers that we need specifically, because the healthcare workers are part of my anti-violence prevention system. I need them. I need them to help these people in the neighborhoods turn away from violence, because I have brought a system that will be here, and I will explain it later.
Thank you. Looking forward to hear more about that. Ms. Gim, you spent a good chunk of your career inside schools. Young people across the country and in Philadelphia are hurting. There's a mental health crisis that I think we all come to acknowledge, and in a sense became an unacceptable new normal. What will be your plan as mayor to ensure that young people have mental health resources in schools? And what role does the mayor have in ensuring that those services connect to a continuum of care into the communities and back to those schools?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I've made it very clear that mental health and well-being of young people is central to my platform about why I'm running. It's not just about young people, it's actually about supporting their families. I feel like we spend an inordinate amount of time focused in on individual youth and not trying to bring whole families into the conversation as well. And that's why I fought so hard to make schools one of the locus points of care, that it needs to be oriented around the care and keeping of young people and their families. It's why we were creative about using CBH reinvestment dollars to help support and pay for social workers in schools who then got hired by the school district of Philadelphia. The one thing that, and it's, I've fought relentlessly to get more psychologists into schools so that kids with IEPs don't continue to lag for months on end, to get wellness programs in so it's not just about high-level therapy and once a week kind of services, but to de-escalate and destigmatize mental health care so it's all about a health and well-being approach. But the most important thing for me is that we have to be creative in this moment. Everything is broken and working against us. And I firmly do not believe that if we create programs based on the current levels of funding or what's acceptable to us based on what the state and feds are going to do, we're going to be behind the 8 ball. Nobody else is doing this. We actually have to use whatever reinvestment dollars that we've got right now to be creative about new types of programs and care that demonstrate success. This is an empathetic room. People aren't going to come to jobs that they feel like they're hurting people. People will come to jobs that feel like they're actually making a difference.
Thank you. Mr. De Leon, a thought about how do you bring mental health to young people in schools and connecting them to the community care?
So let's look at it as if the school is 4 walls. You have the teacher, you have the academics, you have the student, and you have the family. In order for the student to flourish, the family has to be in a position to make that student flourish. So at the school level, the school will offer to the family of the student anger management, post-traumatic stress disorder training, anything that deals with the sickness to make that family a better family, job counseling, financial literacy counseling, giving a job to the family. By giving a job to the family and empowering the family will empower the student. When the student goes to the school being empowered, the teacher will be in a position to empower the student through the academics. You can't just start it with the child itself. It has to be from the school level, from the child to the family, because the family is the most important influence on that child when he leaves the school. And if you don't put that child in a position where he will be comfortable at home in order to be a nurtured individual, to take in the lessons that he will be learning in school, then when he goes to school, he will not be in a position to take himself forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Reinhardt?
So my daughter is in public school. She's in 7th grade in the public school system. So I know the importance of both a nurse and a therapist in a public school. And every school should have mental health access in their school available to their kids. Part of my education plan is to align our city. So we have over $1 billion available to us through behavioral health. But the city doesn't focus to align those resources with the areas most in need, to make sure that behavioral health, trauma treatment is going to the neighborhoods, into the schools where they need them most. If a school does not have a therapist, then we should be working with behavioral health to ensure that that school has access through the city network. That's the type of collaboration that I will lead as mayor. Additionally, we need to do the same thing with library and rec. To make sure that the neighborhoods that are most in need have the strongest after-school programming for library and rec to create whole health for kids and families. Thank you.
And Ms. Ryan, just staying with you for 1 second. So, and staying also with schools and young people, too many times children who need support end up instead being punished for acting up, especially Black and brown children in schools. How can the city work better with schools to ensure early identification, diagnosis, and services to children who are neurodivergent, live with intellectual disability, or on the autism spectrum?
I have a minute and a half for
Yeah.
this. So I think that we need to do a better job with identification and also having the social worker, the therapist within the school will help with this. Often the teachers have large classes. They have many kids with IEPs in the same classroom. It's a very difficult job to also be able to help children that are acting out. But what we need to do is make sure that we're treating that child and taking care of that kid that is acting out. We have to pull them out of that classroom so that the rest of the kids can continue to learn while at the same time treating that child and making sure they have access to behavioral health and trauma treatment. There are a lot of things going on in kids' lives. Everyone here knows that. With the trauma of violence and the trauma of poverty. And we don't always know what's happening inside the home. So it is extremely important that we identify and care for that kid when they are acting out. And as mayor, I plan to use the full power of my office to make sure that behavioral health supports are aligned with that mission and with that vision. And I plan to bring providers to the table to ask them directly what their views are and what their input is on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O, on schools, how do we bring the adequate resources into schools?
So I think the first thing is that we look at the problem in the environment: violence, poverty, hopelessness, lack of family structure or mentoring. That's not in every school, in every neighborhood of our city. And so we have to really focus on those areas first where we have the greatest problem. When we address as a city the elements in the community that is the responsibility of the city that has failed them, failure to provide public safety, safe transportation, clean environment, property tax is a huge problem because many of the taxes, overtaxation, is pushing especially poor people out of their homes. That taxing has to be corrected. In the schools, there has to be a reform of the school structure itself, the governance structure. And each school shall have a clear understanding of what the roles and responsibilities are. What does a principal do? What does the provider do? What does the school police do? They're all different right now. And there has to be a level of autonomy and independence of those experts that we contract with, those the school nurses that work for the city, but also those social service providers within the school, within their areas of expertise. They have to be able to have a level of independence to do what they do and have a separate line of support.
Ms. Kim, yeah.
A little bit. One of the things that has been really detrimental is that we often staff schools based on enrollment. So school staff are just based on the number of kids that are in the building, and that is absolutely bananas. School staff should be based on need. And one of the things that we've been very clear about is that need-based staffing is one of the most important areas because it impacts mental health so much. Every school with a nurse, a counselor, and a social worker. Every region with enough psychologists so that there aren't these ridiculous delays of months and months before anyone can have an IEP. Second, I want to see the mayor's office enforce basically what should be a civil rights function and oversight for the school district. As a council member, I actually sued the school district on behalf of students and families who had been denied IEP services and won compensatory services. Someone needs to step forward and take that kind of responsibility in the same way that the federal government does it to school districts. But I will hold institutions and our school systems accountable for the appropriate delivery of services. And last, I want to make it clear, young people have rights, IEP students have rights. It's one of the reasons why I fought so hard to eliminate suspensions of young people from 5th grade and under, or for primary grades is what we were able to do. I personally think it should have been elementary school. And then we find alternatives. But the core idea is that we're not going to be able to do this just based on how schools are currently staffed. We need to change that, and a mayor should be able to lead it.
Can I jump in on this?
I'm sorry?
Can I jump in on this?
Yes, please, Mr. Leon. And well,
Okay.
I'm also sorry, I should have mentioned before, and I think that was mentioned at the beginning, not every candidate will be able to answer every single question. We have 30 minutes left, so we want to get on a lot of issues.
So I
So
can just jump in real
very
quick?
briefly, yes.
Okay, I won't take too much time.
Thank you.
So the situation is, as you hear it, that everything is focused on the child. And what I'm saying is that we have to change that entire system around. We can't just like focus on the child in the school. When we see that the child in the school is having an issue, we have to then go to the home of the child and lift this home up, okay? Because they both are going to be lifted together. We can't just bring a mother or a father in and say, your child has some issues here in school where they're acting out. No. Also, we have to offer to the parent. How is it at home? Do you need anger management, post-traumatic stress disorder counseling? Do you need job counseling? Do you need financial management? Do you need employment opportunities? These particular things have to also go to the family in order to lift that child. If we just concentrate on the child, we're going to lose the child because we've lost the family. We have to get the family in order to get the child in.
Thank you. Do you want 30 seconds on?
Yeah, I'll
school
just finish
justification?
what I
Sorry.
was saying since I
Thank you.
ran out of time. So I did introduce 2 charter change bills on the reform of school governance, but fundamentally, what I believe is that the mayor should only appoint 4 school members out of 9, and that people should elect 5 in 5 different zones. So there will be a level of responsiveness, accountability, and transparency to each section of our city when they compare what's the difference. But I also did a lengthy hearing on best practices globally in public education. And a couple of the jurisdictions that you look at, for example, is Finland and South Korea and other places like that. But what they do in Finland, which is a great model for us, is that when someone has needs in the classroom, an additional person deals with that individual. And there's someone who can also go from school to school. So each school will have the services it needs, but there should also be an ability to have additional service within the classroom. And that's a great model. It's been very effective, as turns out when you look at the global performance standards. So with that comes some additional benefits the city can provide to ensure that every child receives what they need. Thank you.
Thank you. For time, I want to move to ask a question about addiction. Philadelphia broke a grim record last year, nearly 1,300 overdose deaths. Ms. Gim, Philadelphia will get about $200 million over 18 years from the opioid settlement funds. There are other money out there, but what are the 3 most important things, if we could be specific, that the city should do with the money it gets?
So I think that, first and foremost, we need a public health first approach towards dealing with addiction and crisis. I said long ago that we cannot recreate the failed war on drugs, just say no policies that locked up Black and brown people, criminalized folks, and did not get us out of the addiction crisis. And what we have an opportunity here, but to be clear, I don't think that the settlement money was nearly enough to deal with it, is a chance to build a new future for Philadelphians and to reclaim neighborhoods and restore back not just law and order, but a real sense of vitality and opportunity for a creative new approaches towards treatment, care, and recovery. I firmly believe that a lot of our work needs to go into new models, including rapid intake, housing services that provide also support services for addiction and recovery. I have long touted the need for crisis outreach teams. So this isn't just a criminalizing effort around individuals who are struggling with addiction, but we're pulling people inside, treating people and bringing them off the streets, because everybody cannot just use and die in public in these inhumane ways. And then we're leaning in early on young people and support. We need new models for how we're working with youth, and in particular around substance abuse and treatment and recovery. We've got some interesting models with new schools that are kind of built around this, but I believe that that needs to work its way across our school district.
And Ms. Reinhardt, 3 top priorities. And just to add, from your experience as controller, is there any specific lesson on how to make sure that the money actually gets to its final destination?
Sure. So on the money specifically that's coming into the city, I would utilize that money as part of my overall opioid crisis action plan, which is on my website, rebeccaforphiladelphia.com. And that involves breaking up the open air drug market, as well as compassionate care for those suffering from substance use disorder. And I would utilize that money coming in to help with the compassionate care for those suffering from substance use disorder. And what that means to me is making sure that we have outreach workers going out to people living on the streets, that we're providing services, that we're breaking down the silos in city government so that we can create rapid intake for people ready to get clean. The city needs to manage its operations much, much better to meet the needs of people suffering on the street. In terms of the specific question around what have I gained from being the city controller about getting the money where it's supposed to be, is that the money needs to be spent in a very intentional, strategic way. And we have seen over and over again that money is utilized in a way that is not measured, and therefore is not actually going to the goal. And that is, I could talk more about that, but I've run out of time here. But I definitely could utilize that expertise as mayor.
Thank you. Mr. O, 3 top priorities for the opioid crisis?
Yeah, the use of the money should go to quality care, prevention, and recovery. But you will not solve this problem. Fiscal responsibility is critical to this problem. Who is going to do all this work? How much are they going to get paid? How are you going to continually try to provide care? You can't. Low quality care or no care, because the number of people that are coming into our city and occupying Kensington Avenue, other places like that, is overwhelming. It is not something we can do. We cannot build residences for them. We cannot do all of these things. What happens when they come here, because of the lawlessness and the invitation to do the worst things in our city, they leave behind their families and communities where they came from, because over half of them are not Philadelphians. They leave behind the money and the mental health and behavioral health and the bed spaces and the medical services that are available to them. That money does not follow them here. We have to really stop the idea that you can come here and live in the most accessible drug market in this entire region, where everything goes from prostitution to public defecation to abuse of juveniles and children. That has to stop. The murder, the drug dealing, all that money reinvested into additional crimes have got to end. And then we could handle the population, provide them quality care, provide the residents who are also traumatized with the care they need.
Thank you. And Mr. De Leon, your priorities.
So first, I would declare the opioid crisis a dramatic incident. And then I would launch a system that I developed called the Local Incident Management System, which is a set of processes and procedures that the city government would use to combat the opioid crisis by allowing the necessary responders to work more effectively and efficiently together to manage the crisis itself. Now, what this would happen is in this manner. First, we would reduce the crime. Second, we would treat the people. Third, we would recover the neighborhood. Reducing the crime. This is a coordination between the federal, state, and local officials to close down open-air drug markets. Treat the people. Both brick and mortar locations as well as mobile locations would go and they would triage the people to see exactly what it is that they need, whether or not they need addiction treatment, whether or not they need housing, education, post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health. Recover the neighborhood. This is where I would have my Chamber of Commerce's come into action. Both the normal Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the African-American Chamber of Commerce, and the Asian Chamber of Commerce. They would all come in to talk to business owners that own the businesses there, that we would get favorable lease terms to bring in new businesses into those areas, which would recover the neighborhood.
We're not going to do like rapid fire here. So it's just a question if I get a thumb up, thumb down. The city now is talking about doing using the money for mobile methadone clinics. Is that something your administration will support?
Whatever clinic would be needed. See, you just can't look at methadone as the only mobile clinic. You have to use mobile clinics for each of those drugs.
I understand. I'm just asking, as a general idea, would mobile methadone clinics, if that is something that gets off the ground, is that something your administration will be amenable to if we can get a thumb up, thumb down?
To me, I would want to see the evidence and talk to experts in the field.
Sure. So, see, this is why I sit behind my computer and I like talk on the phone with people. It's easier for me than being on stage with them. Talking is really hard. Okay, if you have questions, send them in. We have only time for a few more, but thank you all. Okay, Ms. Reinhardt, I'm curious, in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams has been increasing the use of involuntary commitment to remove from the streets homeless people with mental illness. Would your administration advocate for expanded use of involuntary tools?
I think that we need a new approach to homelessness, and to me, that involves having significantly more outreach workers going out and talking to the people that are living on the streets, knowing the people that are living on the streets.
I'm sorry, Ms. Reinhardt, I think your microphone is off.
Oh, it is? Sorry, can everyone hear me now? Okay. Okay, so I think that the city needs a new approach to dealing with street homeless. What my view on this is that, and what I've put forth on my website is we need more outreach to people living on the street. We need to know the people that are living on the street in a way that we know what they need. And we need to increase the level of supportive housing, because right now, the path that homeless people, when they go into the hospital and then they're released right back on the street, it's just this cycle where we need to get them supportive housing. In terms of the question around involuntary, to me, we need to take several steps more compassionate, which is more outreach and getting the supportive housing and offering that to them. Because right now we're not doing much at all in terms of the city. And I think that's not acceptable.
Thank you. Ms. Kim?
So I think that Mayor Adams' policies have been shown to be really problematic. One, they may sound like they remove a situation, but in fact, what they do is they just cycle people through more disruptive situations. So they haven't actually proven to have done anything, and I do not believe that they certainly raise questions about the individual civil rights of individuals. So no, I would be avoiding any expansion of involuntary forcing people out. I do aggressively believe in crisis outreach. This is something that I have seen be effective with different organizations and groups, some of whom are providers here, that have found some support and help. I don't think you get nearly enough support and help from the city about how to do that, about alternative options in which people feel safe and supported. And then, and as people who are struggling with mental health issues, which is about 50% of the individuals who are homeless right now. We really do need to expand our mental health care options, people who are in emergency situations and other types of care, because I don't think we've been creative. I think we've just shut a lot of things down and then we go directly into policing. And this opportunity that we've got right now with a lot of providers in the room is to really be strategic right now about the urgent need for rapid mental health supports for individuals who are suffering with episodes and are also causing a danger to themselves and to the public.
Thank you. Mr. De Leon.
Well, under the local incident management system, homelessness would be declared a dramatic incident. But the approach would be different in the sense that the homeless person that we feel is a homeless person, the plan feels is a displaced person, similar to a person that was displaced through a tornado or another natural disaster. So what we're doing is we're taking that individual in as a displaced person, we're giving them shelter. We're giving them food, we're giving them clothing. Then we're going to triage them as to what it is that they need. Do you need mental health care? Do you need physical health care? Do you need post-traumatic stress disorder? Do you need anger management? Do you need job counseling? Do you need employment opportunities? And we're going to keep that person and give that person what they need in order to become a whole person again. Because what we realize is that homelessness normally is something that does not last long for a person. And we want to make sure that for the people that we have, that we come in contact with, that it's not going to be a long-term situation for them.
Thank you. And Mr. O.
Yeah, I think it depends on the level of the mental illness. It depends on the level of the health problems that the individual is suffering, the self-harm, the danger they're placing themselves in. If they are on the streets, if they're in the middle of traffic, if they're in very poor conditions and they don't want to go someplace, then I think it's an effective tool. The issue about it is that when you make that type of forced commitment, there is dollars attached to it. The question is, where do they go? And I think the ability to place them in a better setting is something that we should definitely look at, because we can't just leave them on the street. And we also have to be responsible with the fact that we have to pay for this and we need the resources. I would like to know where they're from, because again, this city draws in a lot of people. They're not from here. I'd like to know where they're from, because I would like to work with the townships or cities or counties where they come from to help us pay for this. And I think they should. And as mayor, I would say to these the surrounding governments that you have received funds in your tax, from your taxpayers to provide services for these individuals that are now in our city that we're caring for. And I need your help in order to provide the level of care that they need. And I think it's important because we also have to take care of the residents and the public in general.
Thank you. Yeah, even the moderator is not from here, so it's a pervasive issue. But so I want to stay a bit of the tension between kind of involuntary and voluntary approaches, criminal justice system. In October 2020, Walter Wallace Jr. was shot and killed by police while he was in the midst of a mental health crisis. Even though he lived a few blocks from a mental health treatment center that knew him, none of the multiple 911 calls that day ever reached the behavioral health workers that, again, were blocks away. Today, the city has two programs, one of co-response with police and a specialist, behavioral health specialist, and one of community mobile crisis units. Ms. Gim, you mentioned mobile crisis units in your safety plan. Do you support the need for both programs, and how do you prioritize funding between the two?
So I was one of the biggest advocates, along with the Treatment Not Trauma Coalition, that helped bring the first non-police mobile mental health crisis units out in the wake of the Walter Wallace murder. And the large reason was not only do I want to make sure that individuals get the healthcare that they need, I really do need police to focus on the crimes that need to be happening. And that's why when Denver and Portland and a whole host of other cities were demonstrating that a number of 911 calls could be diverted into non-police mobile mental health crisis units, which could actually de-escalate situations rather than individuals who have partial, barely partial training for the quote unquote co-responder model, that, you really need to have a strategic way of addressing safety and dealing with this. Now, as under my administration, I am looking to bring these the non-police mobile crisis units out citywide 24/7. There's only 2 that are operating in the city. Clearly, they're not going to be nearly effective enough. And, on the co-responder model, I support all police getting training, first of all, on de-escalation techniques and recognizing mental health episodes and issues. But it is firmly my belief that certain situations, when identified by the caller, need to be de-escalated and don't require that. And I do want our officers to make sure that they focus in on the crimes that they can actually solve and what I think our citizens demand.
Ms. Kim, can I give you 30 more seconds? I'm curious if you can explain a little bit more about what changed after the Walter Wallace Jr. It's my understanding there were mobile crisis units right before in Philadelphia since the 80s.
I'm not sure that there were. I don't think that they were at that type of scale in terms of being able to respond through the 911 response system. The idea ultimately would be that there would be a separate line that individuals could call as self-identifying, not that the police identify, but as self-identifying. And right now what we've got is people call into 911. There's a trained script that can then divert into the non-police, but with only 2 units, it's so little opportunity for us to meet demand.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that. Ms. Reinhardt, how would you prioritize these 2 models, the co-response, the community mobile crisis units?
I think that we need, my mic's on, right? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Got everyone with me here. I think both models are very promising and good models to use. I think that we need our police trained in de-escalation so that when they are in a situation where someone is having a mental health occurrence, that they don't further aggravate the situation, which can easily happen when police are yelling to drop a weapon, for example. At the same time, we need to make sure that for mental health issues that we have the right outreach. I also think there should be a mental health expert embedded into the 911 call center so that if 911 call takers need help with something, that someone is there to assist them with mental health expert issues. I think that all of these strategies are ones that have to be increased, and over time we'll be able to evaluate what is the best way. And when we can evaluate what's the best way, outcomes, then we can decide what to scale up as a city government and how to direct our resources to best help people and their mental health issues across our city. Thank you.
I'm looking at Commissioner Rowan, and I'm just as a point of some things that probably I should have written about, but there currently it's exciting to see this conversation happen. To be honest, it's a shout out to anyone in the audience who might be a crisis response specialist. It's extremely hard work. I had a pleasure of joining and seeing that live, and also to people taking those calls. That's a very, very hard job. And some of them are now, in my understanding, sitting in the 911 center, which is very promising. Mr. O, co-response mobile crisis units.
Yeah, they're both good. They should serve basically 2 different purposes in terms of who calls them and where they go. If there is a clear understanding that there is a mental health crisis, is nonviolent, it may have some sophisticated needs, other things. A mobile unit is great, goes out right to the community, those type of things. When there is indication that someone is violent, acting violent, or has a history of violence, I think it's important that there be a co-responder, because nobody wants to go confront someone who has a history of violence or may have a weapon of some sort, or you're going into an altercation. even when police respond to domestic violence calls, those are some of the most um, unpredictable situations where violence often occurs. And so in family settings and other settings like that, or in the public, or when you're going places, as a professional person, you don't want to be concerned about your safety as you arrive at this location. There should be police there. And I will say that I introduced a resolution, and I'm a big proponent of minimum force training, which is quite different from de-escalation training. Minimum force training is really about training people under stress to do the opposite of with words, but when there's physical altercations, confrontations, how to avoid that, how to reduce it, how to handle people in a way that is non-harmful. And that has to be a training that we embed into police training.
And Mr. DeLeon.
Well, there's already been an evaluation. And the situation is that there's a distrust between the community towards the police. So there has to be a component in between the two in order for them both to heal. That specifically is a buffer. And it's similar to what they do in Amsterdam and what the late Senator Milton Street proposed, that we do something known as a community coach as a buffer. Now, the community coach is similar to the crises management team in the sense that that community coach is trained for mental health awareness, for post-traumatic stress awareness, for anger management awareness, for de-escalation skills, for all the skills that are needed in order to de-escalate a situation that they're brought into. But they come into a system through 311, not 911. And what happens is when you have a non-criminal situation, you call 311. Now, when that person comes out, if it's a situation that that person or persons, if it's a situation that they cannot handle, that they do need police backup, they have a silent alarm where they can push the silent alarm and then police backup would come to help them in the situation. But by having a situation like this, it gives the neighborhood community chance to heal, and it gives the police the opportunity to concentrate on policing, even though they are getting training in that area as well.
Thank you so much. And reminder, I'm sure this audience doesn't need that reminder, but that to reach Philadelphia crisis line, call 988, and it will, connect you with a crisis response counselor on the phone. Okay, we're getting at time. Thank you for bearing with me. We got a bunch of also kind of questions from the audience, and I wanna share with you, I think, a prevailing sentiment in that question, and then ask one of them and let you wrap up with that. And I think a big sentiment that I read through the questions was that, people with intellectual disabilities, people live with autism on the autistic spectrum, or neurodivergent, people with mental illness at all levels are voters. And they're also extremely valuable workers. And I think there's an expectation from the question that I've saw that these voices will be both part of your who you're trying to reach in your campaigns and a part of the eventual mayor's administration. So I hope if there's one takeaway. The last question is, the details of mental health funding, mental health services are really complicated. I've been trying to write about this for a while now, and I still find out all the time things that I just don't really understand. Philadelphia is in an extremely unique position of having the single payer system for Medicaid, for behavioral health, community behavioral health. And again, a lot of this is in the details. For our last question, and we'll just go down the line, I want you to share a little bit of how are you going to approach this? Again, this is big money. So it's millions, billions of dollars. This is really complicated policies from state, federal, Medicaid. How will you approach finding the best way to utilize the money, making sure that these are the best treatment, and working with CBH as a nonprofit to get the care Philadelphians need? And I will also ask you to say, because another thing that came up in the comments is, how can people reach you? Because people want to be involved. So how are you going to work with CBH? And to close, how should people reach your campaigns? Mr. O.
I think the mayor should really make reforms that are long overdue, begin that process. The way the funding has developed and all the regulations or rules, it's overly complicated, has to be simplified, made understandable, so people can use them and benefit from them and have input, those who are professionals and those who are lay people. In my own case, I'll just say that my sister was born with a severe form of Down syndrome. And so I'm intimately familiar with some of the programs that are available and the lack of programs and the difficulties in funding and a lot of the challenges that are faced as she goes from being a little girl through being a teenager to being a middle-aged person to being a senior. Lots of issues there. And I think it's important that we take this time now as we have this moment. Things, I think, have a shelf life. And this is a time where we can really have the political will and the political support to make basic changes in the delivery of services, the payment of services, and to educate the population that is more and more in need of these services. And as mayor, that's what I would do. In order to reach me, it's pretty easy. If you know my name, David O, it's davido.com. And there you'll find my phone number and my email address. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kim.
Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure to spend my morning with everybody here. I appreciate the focus on mental health, which has been a core part of what I believe is needed to turn the city around. The status quo is harmful. That is just the bottom line. The status quo is harmful. It is absolutely not meeting this moment. We do not want a mayor who is just going to do marginal reforms and tinker around the edges. And again, just manage a system that's in crisis. We have an urgent opportunity for the next mayor to be leading with a vision and a sense of purpose. I believe that city government has anchor supports with CBH, with our providers, with other different entities to provide the seed capital to start new things, new projects. We've shown it with the social workers in schools program. We've shown it with the first non-police mobile mental health crisis units. But what we end up doing is we keep them at a small level and they never really are able to demonstrate success or transform broken systems. So what we need to do is have a mayor who actually brings these things to a citywide level that shows the investment, that proves these things can work, and then invests in the therapeutic workforce that's actually going to turn people around. People want to be part of something that's successful. As mayor, I intend to make sure that we deliver a visionary new way of supporting our residents, of supporting our young people, and giving people the city and the future that our city both needs and deserves, and builds a new workforce that transforms all of us here in Philadelphia as well.
And Ms. Kim, how do people reach your campaign?
HelenGim.com, 25 days, I think, till election day. So if this work matters, volunteer, sign up, talk about it, share clips. There are 9 candidates in the race, and they're going to rely on people that they trust as much as they're going to rely on people who are trying to buy up every single airwave commercial that they can.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Reinhardt.
So CBH gets $1 billion. The city gets $1 billion a year. And we know that there are issues with that funding, how it's allocated, because we hear the issues. I've heard of providers that have open spaces right now. I've also heard from residents that they've been told that there's months wait time for those same services. So there's something operationally not working correctly right now. And I've had experience dealing with departmental issues and tackling issues in my roles as chief of when I had 1,000 employees reporting to me. I oversaw the back office function of the city. Procurement, I moved procurement from paper to electronic bidding. I got together the departments that reported to me to cut down on the length of time to pay vendors. There are ways to make improvements, and that's what I'll do with CBH and DBH. As your mayor, I will make sure that the city is functioning for mental health and addiction support services. And we can do better. And I'm sure as the providers in the room know that there are many areas that need improvement. As mayor, I would want to bring you in around the table to accomplish that and to make our city truly work for the people of our city. Thank you. Oh, RebeccaForPhiladelphia.com. All
Thank-
spelled out, RebeccaForPhiladelphia.com. Thank you.
so much. And last but not least, Mr. DeLeon.
So what I'm proposing is to turn around how municipalities deal with and solve their problems. That's the beauty of the local incident management system, where in this particular type of issue, it's declared a dramatic incident. Now, what happens is that the CBH, all these department heads are trained through FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Act, as incident specialists. Each one of them, because I myself am trained as an incident specialist. So once we train everyone as an incident specialist, as far as these particular situations are concerned, they have the skill necessary to sit down and put a manageable plan together as to how the money should be allocated and why the money should be allocated in that particular manner in order for this to advance. Now, the situation is that once we do something like this, all of these issues that we have in the city of Philadelphia, regardless of what they are, will be solved by individuals that are trained as specialists to solve these particular type of problems. Now, in order to get in touch with me, in order to see these plans, how they would unfold, all you have to do is go to deleonformayor.info. Thank you.
Before I ask Sherry to close us out, I am not usually in the business of asking to applaud politicians, but can we thank them for coming? And thank you so much. Good luck to you all.
I'm going to ask you to give one more round of applause to Abraham too. Thank you. So thank you for all of you who took the time to either come here in person today or who are joining us online. It's to me, it's very validating for all of us in the field that we work in to see so much interest. It's not a group of people who are just, going to work every day for a paycheck. The people in this room are intimately involved in the work that they do, and they care about the issues. It's our hope that all of you were able to get a sense of where these candidates stand. I want to thank the four of you for coming today. I was going to make a joke in the beginning to say, this is all brand new for you, right? This whole debate thing. I know that you've been doing a lot of them, and we really do appreciate you making the time for us. We did receive a lot of questions, so they're all downloaded now. We're going to get them to the campaigns, and we will get them out to you as soon as we can. And the last thing I want to say is the May primary is right around the corner, and the vote is in our hands. So get out there and vote. Thank you.